The ground beneath us trembled, not physically, but in the spirit. We had come to silence a weak pastor. He had mocked our altar. That night, we came with full force, spells prepared, demons summoned, and blood freshly drawn. But before we reached the gate, I saw them. 3 figures, kneeling, eyes closed. They weren't praying softly. They were roaring, in tongues. It was violent, strange, unrelenting. Then it hit us. An invisible wall slammed into our bodies. My chest tightened. My ears rang. My demon screamed. We tried to press forward, but every step closer felt like we were walking into fire. Real fire. We ran, and we had never run before. Not once. That was the first time I saw what midnight prayer really does in the spirit realm. It wasn't cute. It was war. And that was also the night my demons began to fear. If you've ever wondered whether prayer at midnight actually does anything, stay with me. What I'm about to share will answer your question. But I must warn you. It's not what you expect. Hit subscribe now so you don't miss what happened next. My name is Caleb. I'm 32 years old now. But there was a time when people didn't say my name out loud. They whispered it, or avoided it entirely. By the time I was 19, I had done things most grown men wouldn't dare think about. And I wasn't born into darkness by accident. I was raised in it, trained in it, taught to love it. It all started with my mother. I was 15, a skinny teenager in a poor neighborhood. I didn't know much about God. Honestly, I never even saw a Bible in our home. My mom had her own truth. She said Christianity was weak, fake, foreign. She said real power came from the spirits of the land, and that I was born to serve them. At first, I thought she was joking, until she took me to my first ritual. There was chanting, animal blood, symbols drawn on the ground, and something came. I can't explain it to this day, but something entered the room. You couldn't see it with your eyes, but you could feel it pressing on your skin. That night, I blacked out. When I woke up, everything had changed. My mind, my eyes, my appetite for violence. From then on, my life had one purpose: to destroy anything that stood in our way. In high school, I wasn't just feared, I was untouchable. Teachers avoided eye contact. Students changed seats when I walked into the room. Even the school security guard once asked to be transferred. People think demons are a joke. I used to laugh at Christians who said God is in control, but lived like the devil was their landlord. Have you ever met someone who looked normal but carried something dark in their presence? Someone you couldn't explain but just felt off? That was me. I didn't just curse people, I watched their lives fall apart. One teacher lost her son after giving me a bad grade. A boy who made fun of me couldn't walk for weeks. And it wasn't random. We planned it. Spirits gave us details, names, locations, times. We never missed. If you think evil is dumb or clumsy, you've never seen it up close. We thrived on lukewarm Christians, those who prayed once a week and called it faith. They were easy prey, like sheep that wandered from the flock. But all that power, all that fear, all that darkness, none of it prepared me for what happened the night we tried to attack a pastor, and were stopped by 3 people speaking in tongues outside his house at midnight. If you think you know how this ends, think again. Subscribe now, because what I'm about to tell you next will challenge everything you think you know about spiritual warfare. You know how some people say they just knew something was off growing up? I didn't have that. For me, evil felt normal. It was my everyday. But looking back now, there were signs. There were warnings. God was whispering to me. I just didn't know how to listen. Let me take you back to one of the first strange moments I ever had in public. I was sitting in class during a math exam. Quiet room. Everyone stressed. And suddenly, I looked up and saw shadows moving across the walls fast, like streaks of smoke. No one else reacted. Just me. One of the shadows stopped right above a girl's desk. She had been praying earlier. I saw her lips moving before the test started, and the shadow hissed at her. I didn't hear it with my ears. I felt it in my head. She looked up and caught my eye. I smirked. She failed that test miserably, and 3 weeks later, she left school after suffering a mysterious seizure in church. People said it was epilepsy. I knew better. That was the beginning. At home, my mom got deeper into rituals. She would wake me up at 2 a.m. to pour black oil on the floor and chant over photos of people. Sometimes the room would grow ice cold. Sometimes it would stink like rotten eggs. I didn't ask questions. I didn't need to. The spirits were already speaking to me. One night, I had a dream, if you can call it that. I was flying, but not freely. I was being pulled, like my soul had become a leash in someone else's hand. And I saw people I had never met before. Crying, begging, then flames. Not the Hollywood kind. The real thing. Hot, endless, alive. I woke up sweating. My chest was wet. My hands were shaking. My mom smiled and said, "The spirits are showing you your calling." But the signs didn't stop there. At school, animals started avoiding me. Dogs would growl. Cats would disappear. Babies would scream if I got too close. Have you ever been around someone who made your skin crawl for no reason at all? Someone who brought a heaviness into the room without saying a word? That was me, and I liked it. That's what scares me the most now, how much I enjoyed the power. But even back then, something strange would happen whenever I passed a group of believers. Not churchgoers, not religious folks. I mean real ones. You could feel their peace, and I hated it. One time, I walked past a small Bible study group on campus, and my stomach turned so violently I had to vomit behind the building. Another time, a woman tried to pray for me, didn't even touch me, and I couldn't breathe for hours. There were signs, small moments, glitches in my reality. The demons I worked with didn't want me near real Christians, not because they were weak, but because they were dangerous. But here's the thing, I still thought I was in control. I thought nothing could touch me. Until the night we tried to silence a pastor and got ambushed by 3 people praying in tongues at midnight. What kind of prayer terrifies demons that much? Stay with me, because what happened next changed my life forever. And if you're not subscribed yet, this is the moment to do it. The next part will explain why true believers are never really alone. By the time I turned 25, I wasn't just participating in darkness, I was leading others into it. I had a group, a small but deadly circle. We didn't party. We didn't drink. We planned spiritual attacks. We had one job, find cracks in people's lives and tear them wide open. We called it assignments. And on the night everything changed, we were on one of those missions. A local pastor had fallen into sin. The spirits told us. He had once been fire, bold in the spirit, known for deliverance. But now he was drowning in lust and pride. He had opened a door. And once that door was open, we were allowed to enter. Our plan was simple. Enter his atmosphere at night. Strike fear. Sow confusion. Destroy his voice. We arrived around 11:50 p.m., preparing to launch the attack by midnight. But what we didn't know was that heaven had already scheduled a counterattack. As we approached the house, something caught our attention. 3 young people were in a neighboring house. On their knees, eyes closed, arms raised. They were praying in tongues, loud, intense, unbothered. One of them kept repeating, "Every arrow of darkness back to sender." Another was crying in tongues like someone in labor. And suddenly, everything around us began to tremble in the spirit. Demons that had followed us stopped moving. The spirits that usually walked ahead of us started pulling back. We tried to press forward, but the air thickened. Breathing became hard. I looked at one of my boys, and his nose started bleeding out of nowhere. Then I heard it, clearer than anything I had ever heard before. "Touch not my anointed." I froze. We all did. And in that moment, we knew we weren't the predators anymore. We were the prey. We ran, full speed, back to our base. No one spoke the entire way. Everyone was trembling, including me. Can you imagine being feared for a decade? Then one night, a few college kids on their knees send your whole demonic team running for their lives? I couldn't sleep that night. I had to know what gave them that kind of power. So I went back the next week, not to fight, but to watch. And that's when I saw him. One of the young men, always praying at midnight, every night, sometimes outside, sometimes in his room, but always on time. From 12 a.m. to 2 a.m., he would pray like his life depended on it. I made him my next target. I wanted to prove that the first night was a fluke, that maybe we were just off. But the more I tried to touch him, the more I realized something terrifying. He was protected, covered, sealed, and I wasn't the only one who noticed. My demons noticed too, and they were getting restless. What do you think happens when the powers of darkness keep failing against one person? I had to find out. Don't miss the next part. Hit subscribe now, because the real confrontation was just beginning. I had never failed this many times on one target. Not once. Every time I tried to attack that young man, the same thing happened. I would leave my body through projection, circle his home, and then a wall, an invisible force. Sometimes it felt like wind. Other nights it felt like fire. But I could never cross it. The spirits started warning me. They said, "He is covered." Not by religion, but by covenant. I didn't fully understand what that meant, but it made me furious. What kind of human could resist our power without even knowing we were trying to attack? So I changed strategies. No more frontal assault. This time, I would infiltrate. I started following him. Not physically at first. I would observe him in the spirit. He had a schedule. 12 a.m. to 2 a.m. every single night. He was praying. Some nights in English. Other nights in tongues. Sometimes he would call names. People he didn't even know were under attack. There was one night he called my name. He said, "Lord, I don't know who Caleb is, but save him. Snatch him from the fire." My heart stopped. How did he know my name? I had never spoken to him, never crossed his path in the natural. And yet, he prayed for me, not against me, for me. That was the moment something inside me cracked, and I couldn't fight anymore. The next week, I followed him, this time physically. He was heading to a church service, and something in me, something desperate, told me to go in. Now, I wasn't planning to repent. That wasn't the goal. I just wanted to understand. I wanted to study his atmosphere, the way we used to study altars before we desecrated them. But the moment I stepped inside that church, everything changed. No one laid hands on me. No one cast anything out. They were just worshiping. Simple songs. Simple people. But the glory in that room, it burned like nothing I had ever felt. My body started shaking. Not because of fear, but because the spirits inside me started panicking. They began screaming, not out loud, but inside my mind. Then it happened. One by one, they left. I could feel them pulling out through my skin. I fell to my knees, not because I chose to, but because I couldn't stand anymore. I was empty. For the first time in 10 years. I felt human again. Can you imagine being used by darkness your entire life, only to find out you were never supposed to carry that weight to begin with? That was the turning point. And friend, what happened after that moment, how I was delivered, restored, and brought into light, is something you need to hear. So make sure you're subscribed, because the next part is the moment the devil lost me for good. I lay on the floor of that church for what felt like hours, sweating, crying, gasping for air I didn't even know I needed. My body was empty, but my soul, it was waking up. The pastor hadn't even started preaching yet. He just stood there quietly, watching me. Then he said something I'll never forget. "You don't need to explain. Jesus already knows." That sentence broke me. I had spent years hiding behind altars of darkness, mastering secrets and sacrifices. But here, in a room filled with worship, I was completely exposed and fully accepted. One of the prayer leaders came and gently placed a hand on my back. She didn't shout. She didn't rebuke. She just whispered, "Come home." And that's exactly what I did. Right there on that church floor, I gave my life to Jesus. I didn't understand all the theology. I didn't know what came next. But I knew one thing with my entire being. The demons had no more right to me. They were gone. And something better, someone better, had taken their place. I remember feeling something pour over me like warm oil. It was peace. I had never felt peace in all my years of power. Not once. But now, it wrapped around me like a father's hug. Over the next few weeks, I went through real deliverance. The kind you can't fake. Old covenants were renounced. Evil altars were broken. Dreams that used to be filled with torment turned into visions of light. I started waking up at midnight, not to attack, but to pray. The very hour I used to project into people's homes became the hour I would now spend crying out to the God I once mocked. And he answered. Every time. Have you ever seen someone completely transformed? Not just a little better, but unrecognizably different? That was me. Even my own mother couldn't believe it. At first, she cursed me, said I had betrayed the bloodline. But a few months later, she showed up at church, and she gave her life to Christ too. That's the kind of chain-breaking power I'm talking about. It wasn't a sermon that saved me. It wasn't a man. It was presence. It was Jesus. And it all started because 3 young people decided to pray at midnight. They didn't know they were saving a soul that night. They didn't see me lurking in the shadows. But their tongues lit up the atmosphere like wildfire. And that fire chased the darkness right out of my life. If you're still wondering whether midnight prayer matters, let my life be the answer. You might still be wondering, why midnight? What's so special about praying between 12 and 2 a.m.? Let me tell you what I've learned, not from books, but from the battlefield. Midnight is not just another hour on the clock. It's a gate in the spirit, a crossover point between one day and the next. It's when spiritual activity is at its peak, both angelic and demonic. Before I got saved, that was the hour we launched most of our attacks, because that's when people are most vulnerable. Sleeping, distracted, uncovered. But when believers wake up and stand guard at that hour, especially in tongues, they don't just pray. They interrupt demonic agendas. They intercept spiritual assignments. They seal their homes. They cover their families. Those 3 young people who prayed that night had no idea I was nearby. But their midnight intercession became a wall of fire. It crushed the spirits that used to obey me. It exposed my limits. It proved to me that Jesus was not just an idea. He was present, alive, fighting. And now that I'm on the other side, I don't miss a night. Not because I'm afraid anymore, but because I know what happens when we sleep through spiritual warfare. Midnight prayer works. Not because the clock is magic, but because heaven responds when believers take their place in the night. If this opened your eyes, there's more where that came from. Subscribe now to hear more real stories like mine and discover how the power of God is stronger than anything in the dark. If God could deliver someone like me, a man deep in darkness, raised in witchcraft, used by demons, then he can reach anyone. My life is living proof that no one is too far gone, and midnight prayer is not a ritual, it's a rescue. So if this story stirred something in your spirit, don't scroll away. Click subscribe now. We share real stories that glorify Jesus and expose the enemy, because every soul matters. And your midnight might be someone else's miracle. Will you stand in the gap for someone tonight? Hit that button. Let's walk in the light together.